So Heather's sitting behind me. She starts laughing, and she says, Pastor, you might try another name that might work a little bit better. They were just thinking I was celebrating, the opening of Dick's, Dick, So I yelled, Chad, and Chad turned over and looked, and so I motioned that we were going back to the church. Well, I was kind of like one voice crying in the wilderness, but nobody was paying any attention. Oh, man. Well, our lesson today centers on, once again, on John the Baptist, the voice of one crying in the wilderness. This time, however, people were listening and people were paying attention. Now, John was a preacher of righteousness. He wanted Israel to repent. He wanted Israel to turn around, to turn their life around. But his message was not the one-dimensional diatribe that we sometimes imagine. It was a very challenging message that we all need to hear even today. John the Baptist announced the coming of the Messiah, of course. And, of course, his announcement came 30 years after Christ's birth. But John's announcement was just as important as all the others. John's role was to prepare the way for Christ's coming. So how do we prepare for the coming of Christ? Well, we prepare, according to John, in 3 ways. And they can be summed up like this, very simply. If you have wealth, share it. If you're in a position of trust, honor it. If you have power, don't abuse it. You didn't know that John the Baptist dealt with such contemporary themes, did you? Well, he did. And what we want to do is look at each one of those 3 individually this morning. If you have wealth, share it. And the crowds asked him, what then should we do? In reply, he said to them, whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none, and whoever has food must do likewise. Christmas is a time of sharing, isn't it? It's that time, and we exchange gifts with one another, and many of us will go even beyond that. We'll possibly drop some money into a Salvation Army kettle, or we'll write checks to worthy community projects or charities we like to support. Some of us will even make an end-of-the-year contribution to the church. Yes, we are hoping and praying for that. We certainly don't give up now. You guys are doing great. Please don't give up. You're doing well. Keep it going. Keep it going. There is something about this season that helps us to see beyond ourselves. It helps us to see more clearly the needs of others. Just something about this time of year. Of course, not everyone is able to give to others this year. In a stewardship drive, one of the members sent the pastor the following letter. Dear Pastor, in reply to your request to send a check, I wish to inform you that the present condition of my bank account makes it almost impossible. My shattered financial condition is due to federal laws, state laws, county laws, corporation laws, mother-in-laws, brother-in-laws, and outlaws. Through these laws, I am compelled to pay a business tax, amusement tax, head tax, school tax, gas tax, light tax, water tax, sales tax. Even my brain is taxed. I am required to get a business license, a dog license, not to mention a marriage license. I am also required to contribute to every organization or society which the genius of man is capable of bringing to life. Women's relief, unemployment relief, every hospital and charitable institution in the city, including the Red Cross, the Purple Cross, and the Double Cross. For my own safety, I am required to carry life insurance, property insurance, liability insurance, accident insurance, burglar insurance, business insurance, earthquake insurance, tornado insurance, unemployment insurance, fire insurance. I am inspected, expected, respected, dejected, rejected, re-examined, informed, reformed, summoned, fined, commanded, and compelled until I supply an inexhaustible supply of money for every known need or hope of the human race. Simply because I refuse to donate something or other, I am boycotted, talked about, lied about, held down, held up, robbed until I am ruined. I can tell you honestly, had not the unexpected happened, I could not enclose this check. The wolf that comes to so many doors nowadays just had puppies in the kitchen. I sold them, and here's the money. I guess we all feel like that sometimes, don't we? Demands for money seem to be on all sides, particularly during this time of year. And yet the gift of Christmas is a gift that must be passed on to be fully enjoyed. Christ comes into our lives bringing unmerited and unconditional love and grace. Only the coldest of hearts would shut him out. Only the most selfish of spirits would not reach out then in generosity to others. Our enjoyment of Christmas is often proportional to the joy that we bring to others. If you have wealth, share it. Here's John's second prescription for preparing for Christ's coming. If you are in a position of trust, honor it. Even tax collectors came to be baptized, and they asked him, "Teacher, what should we do?" He said to them, "Collect no more than the amount prescribed for you." Now, you know about tax collectors during that day and time. They collected taxes on behalf of the Roman government. Now, they were despised as Roman collaborators. They were also infamous for their lack of ethics. They would add on extra fees to the amount they collected, and this generally made them quite prosperous. Now, John doesn't tell them to give up their jobs. He doesn't tell them to quit their jobs. After all, somebody has to do it. What he tells them is to exercise honesty in their work. They are in a position of trust. They need to honor that trust. Does it appear to you that honesty is sort of a disappearing commodity in our land these days? Huh? The term fake news, we didn't even hear that until this year, right? We didn't hear that. Well, let me tell you a story about this woman reported an experience she had in Japan a number of years ago. She was standing in line at a subway station, and she noticed a pile of money lying on a counter unattended. Others in the area noticed it too, and she watched with amazement as each person left it right where it was. Finally, she said, "I was glad to see one woman walk over and pick up the pile of bills, but she just took them over to someone else to ask if that person had left them there. When he said no, she put the money back where it was." How long do you think that money would have laid there unclaimed in this country? Probably not long. Probably not long, I suspect. Something scary is happening to us. We have replaced absolute principles of conduct with sort of a moral relativism. As a result, more and more students are cheating on their schoolwork, and more adults are cheating on their taxes. Christine Hoff Sommers published an article some time back entitled "Ethics Without Virtue." In this article, she criticized the way ethics is being taught in American colleges. She pointed out that students taking college ethics classes debate abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, DNA research, and the ethics of transplant surgery, while they learn almost nothing about private decency, honesty, personal responsibility, or honor. A colleague of hers did not like what she said in that article. The colleague told her that in her classroom, she would continue to focus on the issues of social injustice, minority oppression, corruption in big business, transgression of multinational corporations in third world countries. The colleague explained, you're not going to have moral people until you have moral institutions. You will not have moral citizens until you have a moral government. She made it clear that Ms. Hoff Sommers was wasting time and even doing harm by promoting personal virtues and not awakening the social conscience of her students. At the end of that semester, that same colleague came to Ms. Hoff Sommers' office carrying a stack of exams and looking very upset. "What's wrong?" Ms. Hoff Sommers said. Her colleague said, "They cheated on their social justice take-home finals. They plagiarized. More than half of the students in her ethics class had copied from secondary sources." "What are you going to do?" Ms. Hoff Sommers asked. Her colleague gave her a kind of a self-mocking smile and said, "I'd like to borrow a copy of that article you wrote on ethics without virtue." Ha! A hard but important lesson to learn. We simply cannot have a society that is not built on honesty and trust. If you have a position of trust, whether it's in business or government or church or within your home, honor it. That's the second way we prepare for Christ's coming, by living trustworthy lives of honesty. Well, here's the final way. If you have power, don't abuse it. Don't abuse it. Soldiers also asked him, "And what should we do?" He said to them, "Do not extort money from anyone by threats or false accusation, and be satisfied with your wages." In other words, don't abuse your power. Power is frequently used in our language today and in our society. White males are particularly on the defensive these days. And why? Well, they are seen as having power. Power in government, power in business, power in the home. Women and minorities are seen as being powerless. Now, it's an overgeneralization, of course, but it's also historically true. Did you know that women didn't gain the right to vote in federal elections in the United States until 1920? And did you know women couldn't vote in Switzerland until 1971? In the 1960s, most states wouldn't let a woman sign for an apartment lease, obtain a credit rating, or apply for a loan unless her husband or a male relative agreed to share the responsibility. At that time, many people believed it was smart for women to act dumb. Some parents wouldn't send their daughters to college. And according to a 1965 study, 51% of men thought women were temperamentally unfit for management positions. Now, we're not talking, ancient history here, folks. We're talking, last couple of decades, right? And women and minorities are still at a disadvantage in many ways. Power is distributed inequitably. But all of us at one time or another are in a position of power. A parent has power over a child. An employer has power over an employee, right? A teacher has power over his or her students. A pastor has the power of the pulpit. And John says to each of us, if you have power, do not abuse it. There's no better example of the tragic abuse of power than King Herod. King Herod. Now, the young King Herod had been an exceptionally able ruler. He erected palaces, fortresses, temples, aqueducts, cities, and the great new temple in Jerusalem. He stimulated trade and commerce. He was so highly respected by Rome that he would actually go down in history as Herod the Great. Herod the Great. But his life deteriorated into paranoia. He was continually writing to Rome for permission to execute one or two of his own sons for treason. And finally, even his friend Augustus admitted, I'd rather be Herod's pig than his son. Within the Christian community, Herod will always be remembered for his decree that all male children in his kingdom should be killed. And this was his plan for eliminating a potential threat to his throne. It didn't work. It didn't work. The tiny baby who would become King of Kings escaped. Now, Herod did execute John the Baptist when John pointed out Herod's moral failure. How could a man fall so far? How can that happen? Power does something to people. The abuse of power is a terrible thing, whether in the workplace or the home or the church or any place in society. So, how do we prepare for Christ's coming? John the Baptist tells us pretty plainly, if you have wealth, share it. If you are in a position of trust, honor it. If you have power, don't abuse it. In other words, follow the example of Jesus Christ. Because you see, he had it all, right? He had it all. But he gave it all up because of his love for you and me. Amen. Thanks for watching. I hope this video can further the discussion of your relationship with Christ, either at home or maybe in the comments below.